everyone who's listening to us, if you have any questions for Simon, please shoot them out. I'll take notes and bring them up eventually when we get to the topics. Okay, Simon, thank you a lot for coming, for joining our little show here. It is an honor to have you at the little house.
That's nice of you, Rod. Thank you, kind sir, for asking me.
Yeah. So, Simon, could you talk to us a little bit and share your history in fishing? How did you get into fishing? And if fly fishing wasn't the first thing, how did you get into fly fishing? Who was your was it your dad, or who taught you how to fish?
Of course, it was my dad. Well, I was lucky, right? Because my dad was a fly fishing instructor, so he had a fly fishing school. So I had no choice, right? I mean, he taught fly fishing, and so when he started the school, I think like 1972 or something. So I was probably 8 when he started the fly fishing school, and I liked hanging out with my dad, and so what better way of learning how to fly cast than with a fly casting instructor? So he was he took me fishing first, right? We started off fishing, coarse fishing. I don't know if you know the term coarse fishing in Brazil, but in the UK, coarse fishing is fishing for non-edible fish, like not for trout and salmon, but for roach and carp and bream, dace, tench, those kind of things.
Okay.
So we would fish for those with bread paste and worms and bait and that type of stuff. And then I guess when I was 6 or 7, we had a pond in our garden, a big pond, actually, about half an acre in size.
Where was that? Where was that?
It was in England, in a place called Kent, near London.
Okay.
And this pond, my dad stuck in, a long story, but the simple part of the story is my dad stuck in 2 big goldfish into this pond. And they bred, and they produced like 1,000 baby goldfish. And so all these little goldfish are swimming around 3 inches long, 2 inches long. My dad, he's an entrepreneur, and he goes, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to sell these as outdoor hardy British goldfish, born and raised in the wild, and not raised in some aquatic farm." And so he paid my sister and myself 1 penny, 1p, 1 penny, 1 pence, whatever you want to call it, per fish we caught to catch them for him. And we'd put them in a big net, and he would take them to local pet shops and sell them. And so we started off when she was probably 5 and I was probably 7, doing this commercial fishing for goldfish.
Early aquaculture business in the family.
Yeah. And there was thousands of them. I mean, there was probably 10,000 in the pond at one stage, because they breed like crazy when there's no limitation to space. And so, we fished for them after school and on weekends, and he'd pay us 1p a fish, and then he'd sell them for about £1 a fish, like 100%, 100 times profit. What kind of dad are you?
Try to exploit.
Right. So we went on strike. My sister and I went on strike, and we demanded 2p a fish, because we thought, he'd got no other way of getting the fish out. And he said, "Well, screw you. I'm just going to," and he just got a huge net and just netted them.
All right.
Sold more bulk, so that was the end of our income. And then the good part of that was he then stocked the pond with trout instead of goldfish. And so that's when we started the fly fishing part.
That's cool. And so later on, did you went to college or some sort of a degree, or did you just jump right into the fly fishing industry?
Well, interesting story. So we were in Kent, as I said, and Kent is pretty flat, close to London, so close to population and urban and areas. So there wasn't a lot of clean rivers there. There's a few, but not a lot. My dad always wanted to expand the fly fishing school and go down to somewhere that had river fishing, and they had salmon and sea trout and stuff like that. So we moved, I guess when I was 13 or 12, somewhere around that age. We moved down to Devon, which is another part of England in the southwest, much cleaner, less populated, more rural, had clean rivers, had salmon, sea trout, had more opportunity to expand his fly fishing school from lake fishing, which is really what it was in Kent. And so that's where we started to expand into this river style of fly fishing and the salmon fishing. And that's where I went to secondary school there. And really, I was at school for probably 3 years in England, and my chosen path, if you like, that
Yeah.
I wanted to follow was to be an Air Force pilot. I wanted to fly super fast planes and shoot things down. I thought it'd be a great idea as a kid. And so that was kind of the qualifications and schooling that I took, was to get the appropriate subjects for that. But then when I left high school, secondary school, at 16, my dad said, "Hey, look, you've got another 7 years of school in front of you if you want. You've got college and university and officer school and training, and or you can leave school right now and start teaching fly fishing with me." And I didn't have to think much harder than about 1 second to go, okay, I hate school. Let me out on the river. Let me get and join and start teaching with you. So that's when I started teaching full time. I'd been teaching part time with him and on weekends and school holidays, all the time, learning how he taught. He was always a teacher, right? His career before he was taught fly fishing was maths and physics. He was a teacher at maths and physics
Right.
school.
Right.
And so he'd always taught. He knew how to teach, and so
Great applications as also for fly fishing casting.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, he developed the understanding of casting, particularly a lot back in the 70s. Right, there wasn't a lot of instructors in the UK in those days,
Hmm.
and those that did were good casters and not so good teachers. That wasn't their career. They were anglers who decided to teach. So he developed a lot of terminology and phrases and analysis techniques in casting, and taught me that analysis technique of learning and teaching. So yeah, so that's
That's
how I got
awesome.
into it.
That's awesome. Back then, how big was the school? Can you share us a little bit about that
Yes.
part? Yeah.
Well, when we were in Kent and my dad started the school, I wasn't working with him then, right? As I say, because I was a kid.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
was just him as an instructor, and then we moved down to Devon. And when we got to me being a teacher, so in 1980, that was when I was 16. He bought a sporting hotel, um, quite a large sporting hotel in the UK in the late 80s, and had to hire more instructors. So at the height of the school, we had myself and my dad teaching. We had a guy called Robin Elwes, Robin Gow, Robbie Winram. Those were three premium instructors that were working with us that he trained up. All youngsters that were passionate fly fishers, but he trained them up. And then we had Richard Ticehurst and we had Alex Henderson. And then he also hired a shooting instructor, Cameron, because he wanted to have more of a full season, a full year rather than just a fishing season. So we started to diverge into hunting and fishing and shooting as well.
Understand.
So, but in terms of the fly fishing side, at the most we probably had at any one time we probably had 4, maybe 5 full-time instructors.
That's great. And how did it happen? Like the classes, did you guys just would group set a date and group a bunch of people and then split into the structures, or did you structures would share time from time? Like, this week you're gonna be. How did it work? Just out of
Yeah.
curiosity. Yeah.
Well, so the initial concept when we moved down to Devon was my dad and my stepmom bought a large Georgian house. Had 1, 2, 3, had probably 7 or 8 bedrooms, and he offered residential courses, and so people would come and stay with us, and he would get the income from the accommodation and the food, of course, and we would do evening lectures and morning lectures and stuff like that. And so he built out this program of classes, all of them residential based. The shortest class we did, well, we did daily ones for locals, but the shortest residential class was a weekend, a 2-day class. Our most popular class was a 3-day, what we call casting and catching. And that was 1 day learning to cast, 1 day going out onto a river, learning how to fly fish for trout, and 1 day on a lake. So you learned a bit of everything. And then we had 5-day courses, which were a bit more intense, right? There was 2 days of casting instruction, and there was 3 days of fishing instruction. And then we had 7-day courses, big combined courses where we cross discipline. So you'd have a salmon and a sea trout and a river trout course, what we called a general game fishing course. We had advanced casting and fishing courses. So anything from ostensibly 3 to 7 days, people would come down. So they would book their annual vacation, if you like. Say 15th of June, I'm going down to Devon, stay with us for the week, and we would have this syllabus that we had worked pretty well for teaching people.
That's pretty cool.
That was awesome. Awesome.
Does the school still exist?
No. So my dad retired in 1990. He and my stepmom sold the sporting hotel I was telling you about. And I bought the fishing business off him, the school off him. And I set it up in a local pub in Torrington, in Devon, where we lived. And I just came up to the pub and say, look, you guys have got the school. I need somewhere for people to stay. Can they stay with you? And in exchange, will you build me some lecture facilities and a small fishing shop? And they said, for sure, of course we did. So we kind of moved the school to this fishing pub, this hotel, and ran that from 1990 till 97, when probably 99. Oh yeah, 99, when I moved out here to America. And then there was only myself and Alex as the instructors initially, and then Alex left, and so then there's only myself, and there's not a lot to sell, right? You're the teacher, you're the person they're coming to see. Yeah. What do you sell? So we just kind of closed it down and moved out here to America.
And there comes a question. Hello from UK. Question, Simon. What made you move to USA? That's Cassidy. Thanks for the question.
Yes. Well, let's be honest about that. Marriage. So the simple story is that when I took over the fishing school from my dad, I didn't have that accommodation side. And so my father made enough money in the fishing and shooting season through food and accommodation and drinks and everything else through the hotel and regular non-fishing people staying at the hotel that he had a year-long business. So when he sold the hotel and I bought the fishing business, I only had the fishing business, and I just ran that from April to October, which is the fishing season in the UK. And so in between October and April, I'd go and find some shitty little job in some grotty little establishment in the town I lived in to pay my mortgage, right? Just to have some income during those months. And I'd work and every winter I'd get another job. I'd work in a petrol gas station, pumping gas, or in a hotel at a reception, and in factories. Each year I would do something. And then the last job I had doing that was the worst job I've ever had in my life. And it was in some paint factory where I stood in this little square that was painted on the ground. And it was like a 3 foot by 3 foot square. And I had to stay in the square for my entire shift between my coffee and lunch breaks. And this rotating belt moved in front of me, and I had to load it up with metal brackets. And it moved on and went into an oven and got painted. And the guy next to me took them off. Mind-numbingly boring job. Yeah. And luckily at the time, I was consulting for a travel company in the UK called Frontiers. They're big in America, and they'd also opened up a London office up in Albemarle Street. And I was their kind of UK fly fishing consultant, if you like. And at the time I had this dead-end awful job. They were opening up a lodge in Tierra del Fuego for sea trout on the Rio Grande. And they say, look, we're opening up this lodge. We've got some Argentinian guides, but we'd really like an English person to go down and guide down there, because we're only going to have English people going down. And so we want an Englishman who understands the habits and is fluent in the language and Would you be interested? And it took like a millisecond to decide to drop this pink job that was earning so much money, not I'm going to catch these giant sea trout, which are enormous. There's a great story about that another time. On the first day I went out there. But anyway, to answer Cassidy's question, I did that for 3 years.
Hang on a sec. Let me jump right in. There is a message from Goma.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
Goma. Well, I know Goma.
Yeah.
It's lovely to hear from him. Absolutely awesome. Back in the day, back in those Caltapen and Villa Maria days when I was guiding down there. That's great. Well, It's nice to see familiar faces.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
He's saying
so
that as soon as possible, he's gonna bring you to a to have a hosting clinic in Rio Grande.
I'm coming.
He's saying saludos to you. Yeah.
So Ludo's back.
Goma,
I'm coming back.
Goma.
Roma, thank you.
Gracias.
Yes, I can. I have to make sure there's fish in the river
Awesome.
and some of that beautiful lamb that's down there.
Cool. Fantastic.
So to answer Cassidy's long way of answering the question, what made me move to America is that I got engaged to this beautiful wife that I now have in Scotland, and she didn't like the idea of me going to Argentina for 4 months at a time. And she said, "Yeah, you got to find a different job. Once we're married, you need a full-time job." And at the time, I'd been flying over to the US to teach fishing schools or spey casting schools with a guy called Jim Vincent, and he owned this company called Rio. And he and I got on pretty well, and I would fly out and teach 3 or 4 weeks of schools for him and fly back. And I, just chatting away one day with him, told him about my wife's ultimatum or my fiance's ultimatum. And he said, that's easy. Just come and work for me full time. And so I did. So the year we got married, which was 98, I did that winter season in Tierra del Fuego, was my last one. And in 99, we moved over to America just to close the school down and moved over to America.
Fantastic.
So that's how I got there.
That's the background.
Yeah. A woman.
So,
but not an American woman. You say it wasn't a woman taking me to America.
All right. Simon, would you have an advice for someone who wants to start in fly fishing and might be a little bit confused about the amount of information, overwhelmed by it, and piece of advice?
Yeah, I do get asked that a lot, and what it shows is there's a lot of people who want to get into this wonderful sport. I mean, it's a fabulous sport, right? Fly fishing it really is a great way of living and making a living. Not many people can enjoy that. So I'm very, very lucky that I landed on my feet, and I did that because I was, I'm an old guy. I did this when fly fishing wasn't a buzz thing, and I was in it when it started to get more interested. Now, the social media in particular, there's so many people asking how to get into it, and it is hard, right? I mean, there's the hardest part, and I deal with it from my end, right? I'm, with my job at Rio, being the brand manager and the marketing manager, I get countless number of people coming to me and saying, "Can I be your next ambassador? I fly fish all the time. I promote Rio. I'll do all this," and we'll get 50, 60, 70 people a day sometimes just saying, "Can I do this for you and promote Rio?" And holding my hand out and what will you pay me to do this? There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people now who want to get into this industry somehow. And sadly, social media has made it more of a quick fix than doing the hard, slow process of going through the drills. And I honestly think that the people who are in this industry, whether young or old, and there's some great young people in this industry. George Ravel, for example, he's got a fly shop in San Francisco.
Oh, I met him, George. Yeah, great guy.
He's a great guy. He's a young kid, and I remember certifying him when he was probably 14 for the FFI basic instructor's exam, and his brother Dusty was probably, I think, 12, somewhere around that age. So they were young kids, but you know what? They did it right. They studied, they practiced, they became good casters, they worked really hard. George is in this industry. He's got a very successful fly shop in San Francisco. He's very respected with his blogs.
Great fly shop. Yeah,
great fly shop. And so you can't shortcut that. You can't just have a camera and take great photos and get in the industry by doing that. You've got to have, if you truly want to be respected in this industry by all your peers and your people above you and below you, then I think you've got to have time in the industry. And the easiest thing I think for most people to start with that is to contact a local fly shop and start, if they're good enough, to start to offering classes to the fly shops. A lot of fly shops have their own school programs. Some don't, and if they don't, strike up a relationship with a fly shop and go in the shop and work in the shop. Get to understand the industry by working in the fly shop. Maybe move beyond that into something like teaching for the fly shop, and then you start to write a few blogs about what you're teaching, about your experiences. You travel on trips and you write a few, and gradually your word gets spread out a little bit. Again, it's a hard work. It's not an instant gratification thing, and it's not an instant path. There is no career that's an instant path. There's always
Hmm.
degrees
Hmm.
and universities and colleges, and this is no different. Although the qualifications aren't physically there, I think the respect is only got through that. And be honest, I mean, it's don't just bullshit away about everything. And I just got a 62-inch salmon or a trout, and everything's about
Yeah.
me, about big, and that. It's
Yeah.
just not what people want to hear anymore.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Hard work and patience.
It is, and be good at it, right? I mean, there's a lot of good casters out there who aren't in this industry, and boy, it's pretty easy to see a fake, somebody who talks it all up and thinks they're a good caster or a good angler, and you can tell they're not.
Yep. Fantastic. About That's great for somebody who wants to join in the business or breaking
Maybe
some
not.
advice. Yeah, if you're talking about dream, yeah, you got to follow what you believe in, and yeah. But
I'd love to. I'd love to. I would be utterly over the moon to take a young kid under my wing and teach him up to do that kind of stuff. I'd like my son to do this, right? He's in a similar position to me. He's 17 now, and he and I go over to Alaska every year for, of course, not this year with this lovely disease thing.
yeah,
We go over to Alaska. But the last 3 years we go to Alaska, and he loves his fishing, and I'd love him to get into it, and I would love to mentor and help people out like that. And I have no problem helping out and advising and anybody who is interested in that.
sensational. And do you have any tips for someone who wants to start in the sport of fly fishing? He's curious about it. He saw the line. He saw somebody catching a fish. Uh, what do I
Yeah,
do? I want to jump into the sport. I want
yeah.
to fly fish.
The one good thing about the social media world now is there's so easy to find information about anything. Unbelievable. I mean, gosh, what was I doing the other day? I had some broken sprinkler in my garden, and I typed in this Pandox 92 fixed broken sprinkler thing, and 3,000 videos popped up, and how to fix it and how to change it. Oh my gosh, you can find so much information. So the good thing about the social media world and the internet and the age of this electronic is you can find out everything very, very easily. A lot of people are definitely not so much in awe, but less receptive to people these days, right? There's a lot of people who are on their phones all the time, and so having a physical presence and a meeting with people to a lot of people. My son's kind of similar. He doesn't like meeting a lot of people. He prefers to find out everything on the internet. So that's a great resource. Yeah, there's plenty of resources on the internet. And one of the downsides of that is that if you look up something like how to fly fish for trout, you'll find a million ways, and half of them will be the exact opposite of the other half. And some will say do this, and some will say never do that, and some will say you always want to do this. You should never do that. What are you talking about? So that is the thing. It's sifting through it, but there's no right way. This is fly fishing is an art. The skill in fly fishing, the science in fly fishing, is the casting. Right? Casting is not something you stumble upon. Casting is a skill. It's like tennis or a golf pro. That doesn't happen. So the science and skill side is all about casting. A beginner doesn't need to worry about how good they cast. They just want to go out and catch a fish. So if one video says you should fish this style and another video says you should never fish this style, just check them out, see which one appeals, and do it. And if it doesn't work, then don't do it. Keep it real easy. These little baby steps. You just get on the path and go out. Go with a friend. Go to your local fly shop. Fly shops are great resources, particularly here in the US, where there's so many purely fly fishing orientated fly shops, specialty shops, rather than general fishing shops or general sporting shops that have a little bit
Yeah.
of fly fishing. We're very lucky here in the US with how many fly fishing specialty shops there are. So those are always great resources. And I do know, because obviously I teach a lot of people, women, children, men. I know that a lot of women are intimidated about going into a fly shop. A lot of kids are intimidated about going to a fly shop to experts. So if you are, that's where the internet is a fabulous resource. And we do our own version that we've got on the Rio website. I'm sure you've seen them, or maybe you haven't seen them. We have a
Check
whole
Simon's videos, guys.
the Rio's videos, not mine.
Yeah, Rio's videos.
Um,
Especially the one Simon's teaching. I'm
we
just
have a, we
kidding,
have
but
a,
yeah, yeah, those are great, man. Yeah.
so we do a whole series, right? We've got like 4 seasons of how to, and those are how to do something. They're in-depth videos about a specific fly casting or fly fishing discipline, and goes into it for 5 or 6 or 10 minutes. And those are the in-depth ones. They're called how-tos. But we also have what we call fly fishing tips, and that's a single tip. We got once a week, and it's sub 1 minute, and it's just a simple tip: how to choose a leader, how to thread a fly rod up, how to put your reel on, that kind of stuff. So again, if people are listening to this and actually looking for resources, have a look on the Rio website. And I mean, obviously, I'm going to push Rio because I work for Rio,
Oh yeah,
but
definitely.
that's a good one, and we do some pretty good. There's also some shitty ones on there that we've made. There's ones I wish I could delete, but it's information, and each to their own.
It's
Some people get it.
great piece of content that everyone should check out. Yeah. Great. Let's see. We have a question here. Thank you, Rodrigo and Simon, for doing this nice live video. Thank you, Juan. What's the most challenging casting element to teach, and what great tips could you share?
Juan, my barbel man. Only Juan will know that. He and I met each other in Spain back in 2003, and we were doing these barbel dances after a few beers. A lot of fun memories of that man. So the question was about teaching, right? What was the essence of the
Oh
question?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's jump right back into it. Uh, what's the most challenging casting element to teach, and what great
Hmm.
tips? Yeah.
I tell you what I think is the greatest tip as an instructor to learn, and I've lived by this since my dad told me this, and I 100% believe in it. And the greatest tip for me, for any instructor, I think, is there's no such thing as a stupid student. It's a stupid instructor. And the point of that, I mean, my dad told me that when I was 15, before I even started teaching with him, is that there's always a way to teach somebody, right? You might not be able to do it by a visual movement of your hand. Some people will learn with a picture. Some people will learn with words. Some people will learn by you having your arm around them and giving them some feel. Um, some people, you need to change the analogy. You're saying, well, this is like a golf stroke, and they've never played golf and they've never seen golf. This is like a tennis stroke, or something. So there's always a way to teach somebody. I've never ever had somebody who I can't teach, and I say that, and I'm surprised how many instructors I talk to say, "Oh, I've never this guy. You can't teach him anything." Yes, I don't believe there's a person like that. I'm sure. I think there's a way to get to that. So as an instructor, I think that's a hugely important philosophy, if you call it a philosophy, or attitude. It doesn't help you teach because you might not be able to find the nugget that this person's sniffing around for. So, but I think it's how an instructor should be. I think you're a bad instructor if you believe you can't teach somebody something. So anyway, I believe that. And so one more time, Juan's middle part of his question. What was that?
The challenging casting element to teach. But
Casting element. Oh yes, what is the challenging casting element? Well, I gotta say that has to be the slow tempo of casting.
the
If
slow
it's particularly
tempo.
if it's a beginner, yeah, and particularly if it's a beginner. This applies to spey casting, to double hauling, to any form of fly casting. A novice is hasty and powerful, particularly a guy, and so telling them, and I'm the same. If I pick up a golf club, I want to run at the golf ball and just mash it. I know I
Yeah.
don't shouldn't do that, but that's how I feel. Is that I need to hit it further. So I get that feeling, and so that's the challenging thing: is how do you make people calm down and slow down? And Juan is one of the greatest instructors I know, and I know he knows the answer to that. He doesn't have to ask me that one.
Thanks for the question, Juan. That's great. Got a lot of insights from Simon. That was a pretty good question. Yeah, yeah, perfect. So let's move on. Can you talk to us briefly about the DVD?
Ah, that
This
old
one.
chestnut. Yeah. What in particular? Like, why do we do it, or why is it still around? And not. I mean, what would you like to know? Why is it still around? I want to know that myself. You sell
I,
loads of
I
those
I
things.
I got this one from Rio website about I think it's about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Just wanted
Oh,
more in-depth instructions from you. Yeah. So
so
this helped me a lot, and I use a lot of your methods to teach some of my students here in Brazil. Uh,
thank
so
you.
how did you guys came up with this? What was the gather a group, because there's a group of instructors here, right,
Yeah,
that did a
yeah.
co-work
So they were all
alongside with you.
ambassadors of Rio. So
Yep.
when we made that film, Jim Vincent, the guy I mentioned earlier, he still owned Rio. He sold Rio in 2005, in November 2005, to the company that owns Sage and Reddington. It's now called Farbank Enterprises. So, but in 2005, he owned Rio. And so in 2004, we had our ambassadors. Those are the guys on that video: Ed Ward, and Mike McCune, Scott O'Donnell, and Dana Stern, and a bunch of great casters up there, all
Ned
legendary spade
Porter, yeah.
casters. And at the time, we had planned a video originally, maybe a year or so before that. And one of the Rio guys, John Schultz, he was our cameraman. Um, I was primary presenter and instructor. And one of the, if you like, conditions, and I put conditions in inverted commas because anyone who knows Jim Vincent knows you don't set the conditions. He sets the conditions. But one of the things I insisted on was that I did the video editing. I had a little experience of it, not a huge amount, and that's why it's pretty shitty. But as an instructor, the last thing I wanted to do was have somebody teach the right thing and then the editor chop it out and go, oh, look at that beautiful swan that's flying by, and you completely lose the context. So that was one of the things. So I did all the editing on that because I wanted that instructional emphasis and ethos right throughout. So we did mostly all my part that first year, probably 2000 and late 2003, early 2004. And at the time, and still going, is this Sandy River Spey Clave, which is pretty famous around the world. It has a gathering of the biggest gathering of spey casters in a single show, if you like, an outdoor show. It's just outside, just down the road from where I live now, Portland, in Oregon. And you get 1,200, 1,400 people coming along to watch expert speycast. And the guys on this DVD were all there presenting, and they were all Rio ambassadors at the time. And so we just spoke to them before the show and just said, hey guys, can you stay on a couple of days and let's just go and make this video, and we'd like to have your emphasis on this, and get George Cook to do his Skagit stuff, and get Ed and Mike and get all these guys to do their thing, because there's a lot of ways of teaching, and I teach a few ways, but generally one way. And it's always nice to have other instructors on there, right? You can always learn from other people's teaching techniques and teaching methods. And at that time, and still to this day, right, they're far, far better casters of the short head than I ever was. I've always been a long belly, long head casting person. So it made sense to have these experts on there. So yeah, we just stayed on after Sandy Clave in 2004, that would have been, or maybe 2005. Can't recall exactly, and just filmed their pieces and put those together like that.
Fantastic.
And I know the date because every time I see that video, I laugh and smile, because once we edited the video and put it to like a 99% finished thing, and we looked through it, and there was 2 or 3 things missing. And we're back in Idaho Falls at this stage. And so decided that we'll pop up to a place called the Box Canyon on the Henry's Fork of the Snake River. And that's a part nearest us that would kind of look alpine-esque and steelheady salmonish, that doesn't look like a trout chalk stream. So we went up there to film these last missing sections, and we stayed in one of Jim's friend's house, Mick. And I've always been my entire life a massive fan of Liverpool Football Club. And so the day we were finalizing everything, Liverpool were playing in the Champions League final against AC Milan. And, my wife had taped the game at home, and we were just editing there. And the guy, Mick, who was staying with, had the TV on, and the American news popped up this thing, Liverpool won the Champions League. It's like, brilliant, but no,
I wanted to see it.
I want to watch it. Like all things in 2005, football wasn't even a thing here, but somehow it popped up. So I always remember that exact time because it's May 2005 when the miracle of Istanbul happened. So that's how I know we finished it off. So everything happened prior to that, and it was launched September 2005.
Fantastic. That's great. And you introduced it, at least to me, it was a first time, all these practices in single-handed spay, and as a great tool to use in several fishing occasions, for someone who was traditionally just, just traditional roll cast, and then they have it with several techniques of spay casting with a single-handed rod. I was amazed by it. Could you talk to us a little bit about those techniques? For
Yeah.
example, you introduced it. I believe it's your terminology, or maybe it's from your dad that you applied later on. The point P, for example, that
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't, I never came across this term, and I believe it was from you. Uh, can we talk a little bit about these? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Back to my father being a teacher and teaching me to teach. Right. One of the things is try to simplify how you teach, right? And certainly when you try to simplify things how you teach, it becomes a lot easier for somebody who has no clue to understand, and becomes a more simple, basic language. So point P was actually one of my things. My dad didn't come up with point P, but point P was just a reference. When you cast and mess around, as my misspent youth was casting. I didn't chase girls or go drinking. I just went straight down the river every night and cast and fished and cast, went on the casting fields and cast. And I like to analyze my casting, and I like to play around. And like any kid, you just mess around. It's boring doing this. Let me just try something. And you mess around and things evolve, right? So I cast like the snake roll, that evolved from that messing around. And some of the terminology things mess around, and you start to notice things and as you teach, you notice things, well, this guy's not quite getting it. What? Let me just stand back and see exactly what is going wrong. And I don't recall what year it was that I came up with point P, but I remember I was teaching a person, and he was casting, and this line was spraying around, and I was watching his cast, and every now and then he hit it right. And I just started to notice that there was a part of this fly line. And for some people listening, point P means nothing. So I apologize if this is irrelevant nonsense to you. Babble. Utter babble, but it is. So anyway, there's a point in a cast called a spay cast. It's called point P, or I call it point P. And if it's in a certain position, the cast is great. And if it's in a different position, the cast is wrong. And so I had worked this out by watching these students. And so I gave it a name, and now the name seems to have stuck. So that's how that evolved. And that probably was through single-handed spay casting rather than two-handed spay casting. Right? It applies equally to two-hand as one hand, but it evolved more from the single-handed spay casting passion I have and practice and time I had doing that.
Perfect.
And that's a pretty fun thing. It's when I left the UK, there was spay casting is far more common and prevalent in the UK, right? Everybody's been spay casting, has been salmon fishing since 1872, right? It's just a tradition. You go salmon fishing, you get a 16-foot, 17-pound weight club, and you put on a fat line to it, and you wheel this thing, and you throw it out there with a spay cast, and that's just how it's always been. And spay casting took a long time to gain any popularity in the US because there simply isn't the fish or the fisheries for that kind of tool. The tools had to be adapted first, and gradually the tools started to get a little bit lighter. They have this wonderful species called a steelhead here. You don't need a 9 or a 10 or an 11 weight, 15, 16-foot rod for a steelhead. You don't need them for salmon, to be brutally honest, but us Brits were pretty traditional about things. So you have to have tea with your pinky up. You have to fish with a 16-foot, 11-weight salmon rod for salmon fishing, because that's what everybody has done. So gradually it evolved that you had these shorter, lighter weight rods in the US, and they became lighter and shorter, and they became down to these switch rods, and they evolved to trout spay rods. And so more people got into spay casting because now the tools were applicable to the fisheries that are in the US. There's always been fisheries for single-handed spay casting. And again, the tradition, the commentary on spay casting is this box or this door. And you walk up to this door, this house that says the House of Spey, and you knock on the door of the House of Spey, and you open the door, and you walk in to old salmon fishermen with big rods. And that is what Spey has always been. People, trout anglers were never in this House of Spey. They never saw a place for it. But my dad always taught Spey casting with one-handed rods. That was part of our casting classes. We would have every year, we'd have what's called an advanced casting class, and that was a 7-day class at a school, a 7-day school on casting, and that covered just everything. And that's when we went into these advanced techniques, and that's where he started to develop. I think I referenced it in the video, the Heineken casts, cast stringing. Maybe I don't reference it in the video. I thought I did. I think there's a little chapter.
I don't remember, but maybe you did. Yeah.
Who cares? Anyway, they are components of casts that you take a cast. Like, let's say you're making a roll cast, and you make a roll cast, and let's say you're the world's best roll caster, and you go to a river, and there's a beautiful trout lying, and there's a bush or a branch that's a foot above this trout, and you're wading in the river, and you make a roll cast, and your line lands on the branch. Well, it doesn't matter how good a roll caster you are, that fish with that cast is unreachable. And so the first example of cast stringing is if you were not roll casting because you had a gravel bar behind you, you would not be doing an overhead cast, but you'd be doing a sideways cast called a side cast, right? Most people would do that. And so the first example of cast stringing is you come up into your roll cast position, and instead of going forward in a vertical plane, you turn and you go forward in a side plane. And so you're combining a roll cast with a side cast to create a new cast. And that's what we called cast stringing together two casts. And so it's evolved from there, right? In the world of cast stringing, there's, at last count, 120 different casts you can do with a fly rod, all in the Spey family, not including a single overhead cast.
What?
Yeah.
There's so much to learn still.
There's so much to learn. Yeah.
Forever. Yeah, that's the cool part of it.
Awesome. It's awesome. And that's why I love the single-handed Spey so much, because it is, as a caster, and I get my kicks from casting as much as I do, or more than I do from fishing, because as I said in somebody's video once, that is the only element that I have complete control of, is the cast. I don't have any control of that trout taking the fly or that salmon. I can do things to make it better. And generally speaking, if a trout's feeding on a March Brown and I can catch it, I can get into position, make the right cast and the right drift, but sometimes not. So I don't have control of that, but I have control over the cast. And that's what I like. I like that control. And so that's why I get my kicks from casting. So I play around with all these 120 different cast stringing Heineken casts. We nicknamed them Heineken casts as a single collective term, because, again, my dad, he had, at the time when we came up with this Heineken casting, there's this beer, right? Everyone knows a beer called Heineken. And at the time, there was this ad on TV, which it was a series of ads, and this guy would always be useless at everything. And he could never do anything until he opened a can of Heineken, he drank it, and suddenly he could do it. And I can't remember what the tagline was, but we adapted the casting, so you can't catch a fish doing this, so do this. And, oh, that's Heineken casting. So anyway, that's the term we used. And I love it. I love the Heineken cast and the cast stringing.
Perfect.
And it's moved on. Yeah, more people doing that these days. Again, videos help, and gear has moved on so much more as a result. I mean, you couldn't really do this stuff as easily now as you could when I got into the industry, or even when I moved to America in 99, so 20 years ago. Lines have developed, all right? And in this single-handed Spey casting game, for example, you get specialized single-handed Spey casting lines that make it so much easier.
That was what I was about to ask you. A good line recommendation. Yeah. A line recommendation from Rio for about single-handed Spey casting. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, it's not the best-selling line because not everybody wants to buy a line that's called single-handed Spey. Now, people look at that and go, well, I just want to overhead cast too. Well, we named it incorrectly, and it's my fault because I named it. So I can take the brunt of that criticism. It is also probably the nicest overhead casting line we make, in addition to being a good roll casting line, just because So for those of you who don't know roll casting, the physics of a roll cast is that you have a fishing rod like this. I'm casting this way, and hanging from the line here, or from the rod, is a piece of line. And you only have this little bit of line to make this rod flex. And when you do an ordinary cast, you throw the entire line behind you, so you have a lot more line. And more line means more weight, means the rod bends better, so the rod loads and the rod casts. Well, when you've got a little bit of line hanging here, and then the rest of the line in front of you, there's only a tiny segment of this line that makes the rod bend. And so the first thing you do in the design of a line like this is you make the heaviest part of the line this piece, right? Because that's the part you want to make the rod bend. In overhead casting, it doesn't have to be that way. You can have the front end heavy. But in roll casting and spey casting, that has to be. So there's a certain style of line that can really improve your roll casting, can really improve your spey casting. And we have weight at the back. There'll be heavier lines, right? I mean, our single-handed spey line is 2 or 2.5 times heavier than the standard. So it might say a 5 weight on the box, but if you were to put it on a grain weight scale, I always keep one in the office, you will find that it weighs what about a 7.5 does. And so it's heavier than the standard. But what a lot of people don't realize, I do these talks quite a lot, and there's always little nuggets that people get from talks. What people don't realize is that a business card weighs, this particular one, 20 grains. Right? Grain is a unit of weight. It's not a unit of density, which a lot of people think grains is sinking. In other words, some people will say 300 grains sinks way quicker than 200 grains. Well, you can make that happen, but that's like saying a pound of lead and a pound of feathers. Right? The lead will sink, the feathers will float. They will both weigh a pound. So it's nothing to do with the density. This is to do with weight. So 20 grains is weight of a business card. And a fly line differs, like a 5 weight line. If you do your regular 5 weight line, that differs over 30 feet, which is what the Atma standard is, by one business card, 20 grains. So when you say a line is 2 sizes heavy, it's like 2 business cards, which is a negligible amount spread over 30 feet. So it's a tiny amount, but in the design of a line, you've got to take into account, what is that line supposed to do? What are you trying to make happen? What are you trying to make easy? Right? The things that sell are things that they're easy. So if you make a line that's really easy to roll cast with and single-handed spey cast with, people buy it, talk about it, because, hey, this is really easy with this. And so that's your kind of your marketing thing. So sometimes you have to build a line that's 2 line sizes heavy or 3 line sizes heavy, because that is what it takes to do the job.
Fantastic. Okay, so if you were to go back in time, what piece of advice you will give to your own self towards fly fishing, Simon?
Don't be an idiot. God, become the Air Force pilot. No, just joking. I'll never ever do that. With age comes maturity. I mean, somebody obviously has that state. I don't know who ever coined that term first, but when you're young, you are an idiot. You think, I thought my way is the way. I'd been taught by my dad, and I thought my dad knew it all, and therefore I knew it all, and there was no other way to learn. And I've learned, as anybody, Juan, listening to this, everybody who teaches anything should know that there's way, way more than one way to teach somebody. And I still see demonstrations and videos and clips of people who talk about this is the way to cast. It's like, please. So my going back in time would take a giant lump of wood and whack myself on the head until I understood that those poor students I taught when I was 16, in my early ages, that their style we could have adapted their style to make it work. Not, you must do it like this, and if you're doing it like this, then your style's wrong. Right? So my piece of advice to myself going back in time would be, grow up. You're not God's gift to teaching or anything like that.
Okay, cool. There's different ways to learn. Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. This is a topic that I bring in the Fly Fishing Cast podcast, which is the international version of the podcast that I have one in Brazil as well. And I understand that in developing countries and poor countries as well, uh, the fishing sport, the sportive part of the fishing, the fish sport itself, it's kind of hard once we get to measure, as well as there's a lot of poor people that live near the wilderness and need to extract from it in order to survive. But taking that political side and everything about it, uh, what do you think that has happened to the sport for it to grow as an industry, and what could be sort of like applied in developing countries to expand the sport, fly fishing in general, uh, bring more people into the sport, talk about the catch and release, the aspects that applying this, it's going to be sustainable for the future generations and move the
Yeah.
economic in that and the economy in that aspect. So what's your reflection about it? Do you have any
Well,
insights for us? Yeah.
yeah, my gosh, that could be a whole conversation. That could be a whole hour long
Yes.
in its
Yes.
own right, that one.
Yes.
It's what strikes me is as an interesting comparison is my fishing life here in America and my fishing life back home in the UK. And just to, for example, to answer your question about more people into the sport, here in America, there is very, very few private fisheries. So this town that I live in, Battleground, it's like 23,000 people. Every one of them could go down to the Steelhead River half a mile from here and go and fish it, or go up to the lake that's up here with that's the fishing game stock with trout and they stock with bass. And all you need you have to have your state license to fish, but you don't. There's no day ticket to fish. You just go and do it, right? So the access is incredibly easy for people to go fish everywhere in the US. And they've got that dead right. We make it really hard in the UK with our pompous trespass laws and our property ownership and our riparian rights. In a selfish way, I like the UK way because I know that when I pay my money for my ticket, or I go to Scotland and book a salmon beat, I know I'm the only one on it, and so I'm not surrounded. Right over here, if the steelhead are in the river and I go down, I can guarantee there's another 300 people down there fishing. So I hate that. I'll go and find a spot where there isn't. So you've got to balance that. So if you're
Yeah.
trying to get people into the sport, the first thing is you've got to have the sport absolutely accessible and free, or as cheap as possible. Otherwise, people won't take it up. They won't dabble in it. And so that's an interesting dichotomy between the UK and the US version. I'm not sure which is right yet because I'm very privileged living in the UK with my father having a fishing school and me taking that on. We had 17 miles of river that we leased that I could go and fish anytime I wanted. Nobody else was on them. Whereas over here in the US, you'd find a bunch of anglers on that. So again, I'm not sure which is the right way, but I think the first thing is you've got to give people ease of access at a very, very affordable price. And interesting enough, in this COVID-19 situation, there's more and more beginners and shops talking about people coming in to learn about fishing because they've been driven away from mass people meeting in cinemas and things. They're having to find other outdoor things. So right here in this area of Washington is that I'm hearing from the local fly shops, they are getting people online because they're not allowed in the shops yet, but picking up and asking questions and trying to get into fishing. So the last thing we want is another one of these, this thing to get out of control. But it's not all doom and gloom. I seem to hear everywhere that it's doom and gloom, the fly fishing losing its participants to video games and stuff like that. And the demographic is becoming older and older. You need to go to some of the fly fishing shows that are here in the US, in particular somewhere like Denver. And you go to Denver, and there's a fly fishing show there every year in January. And the average age of you get 11,000 fly fishers over 3 days coming into this, and probably the average age is 30s, mid 30s, not much older than that, maybe early 40s. It's a huge passion for fly fishing. And a lot of that's fueled by this social media thing that came on. Right? The younger people are into social
Oh
media,
yeah.
and so they find their entertainment how they can. And some people, sometimes they click on this little thing or a friend sends them a link and they go, oh, this is cool. And so I don't know if I've answered your question, but because you actually gave me about 9 questions in that one thing. But
Sorry about that.
well, that's right. To me, the simplest things have got to be give people access at reasonable or virtually no cost. And as I said, I like the way they do it here in the US. Is that the fish and game department are paying for the stocking of the lakes and the rivers, the hatchery steelhead, whether you're against steelhead or not, hatchery steelhead or not. And I'm not starting that political equation here because my
Mhm.
views are pretty intense on that. But they are putting hatchery steelhead into a river, and 1,000 people go along and catch steelhead. They're fishing. They're getting out there and catching fish. So that's pretty good.
Okay, cool. Um,
I'm surprised we're not getting any more questions from people. Has everyone dropped out?
there's about 10 people live right now,
Oh, okay.
and
Thank you for
I don't know if
hanging
they,
in.
they yeah, thank you for your time, guys. There's the lost history of Mr. Hart is very interesting. What's the name of your father again? I didn't ask.
Um, well, oh yeah. So John Gawesworth.
Joe
Look,
Gawesworth.
yeah, unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but yeah. So
Very
there's
good.
obviously a Gawesworth.
All right, cool. The school had a name later on, back in the day.
It went through a couple of names. In Kent, it was the Waterside School of Fly Fishing, and then when we moved to Devon, Devon being in the west of England, it was the West of England School of Fly Fishing. And my case in point about slapping myself with a brick is when I took it over, I renamed it the Simon Gawesworth School of Fly Fishing. I'm thinking, this is great, like, yeah, what an ego. It should have been kept it as the West of England School of Fly Fishing. So obviously
Uh,
now it's just dust.
okay, okay. Simon, I have a few more questions for you. One of them is, what was one of the most iconic memories as a instructor?
Whew.
One that comes to mind that was a funny moment or some sort, something like that.
My
I don't know.
God, an instructor, you say?
Yeah, instructing a class, a student, a
Yeah.
funny student, just a moment.
Oh man, I don't know if we've got time for me to think about that because not a particular one. Nothing springs to mind. Um,
Okay.
Not because I make my classes boring and everyone's asleep and bored. I don't. Um, that I have had so many iconic people that I've taught, and not in the name of fame or anything like that, but yeah, one case in point would be a guy I taught called Bo Ivanovic was this wonderful man in the UK, still is, and teaching him in a very short way led me to getting my job at Frontiers and going down to Tierra del Fuego. Also, in a completely different path, him led me to going over to America and working and joining Rio. So it's about paths. You don't never know what path. I use this term in a few conversations and chats. You never know what path you take. Bo was a student I taught maybe twice in my life, but he influenced my life massively. I would never be here if I hadn't taught Bo.
Very cool. Very cool. What about a fishing memory that comes to mind? Any?
God, I got so many. Um, there's the bad memory of the lost monster fish, the lost fish. Oh my gosh. I tell you one that's really sticks in my mind, and um, it was a sea trout, right, sea run brown, and it was in my home river in the west country of England, a tiny little river called the Bray, and I'd been teaching in the daytime on this stretch. My father and I, he actually bought it, and then I bought it from him, and I'd been teaching in the daytime, and there's usually 6, 8, 9 inch brown trout in there, beautiful wild brown trout, and there's a small run of sea trout and a small run of salmon come up it. And as I was teaching one of these pools, I noticed a shoal of sea trout come into this pool and lie out the tail of the pool. And the biggest one in the shoal was probably about 6 pounds, and the littlest one was about 2 pounds. They were good sized sea trout. And I got my students casting for them, and the sea trout were doggo, not interested. So the class ended, and we drove back home. And in the evening, I went back out to fish for them. And I was throwing all these flies at this sea trout, all the typical sea trout flies and nymphs and skating bombers and everything, trying to make them excited. And they were just lying doggo on the bottom, doing zip, ignoring everything. Maybe they swam out of the way of a drifted nymph or whatever. And then something that I've always wanted to take further and investigate, but I don't know how. Something spooked the lead sea trout, the one at the head of the shoal, and the sea trout shot up into the head of the pool, turned around, bow waved back down to its lie, and then started scraping its flanks on the bottom of the river, like it had an itch or something like that. And then it would shoot up the river again and do that again, and it did this scraping thing for about, I don't know, 2 or 3 cycles of the pool, and then it dropped back into its beat again, and into the same spot I'd spotted it. But it was obviously agitated by this move, and so I cast the fly I had on, which was just a little weighted pheasant tail nymph, and of course it just ate it immediately. And it was my biggest sea trout to the time. It was pre-Tierra del Fuego days, so it wasn't one of those beautiful fish from down there, but it was as close to 6-pound sea trout, which for our home river was huge. But it reinforced, and the salmon anglers and salmon law always talk about disturbing a settled fish, right? And nefariously, you can stone the pool, you can throw rocks in and get your dog and throw your dog in, and the dog swims over these salmon and they think it's an otter, and the salmon get all fired up and run around, and you're changing their state. And so those are just lore and legend and poachers' myths, if you like, which apparently work really well if you want to catch them at least on a fly rather than net the damn thing or blow them up with dynamite. But it was just nice to see this happen naturally with this fish's itch, and so it was great. It was a thing that sticks in my memory.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic, great event. I know we need to wrap up. That's okay. It's okay. It's our last topic. Do you have any messages for our listeners later on? The guys who are watching us right now, ladies as well. Just a farewell message.
First of all, thank you so much for those people who hung around for this dreary hour of listening and suffered it. I'm stoked that anybody did. Thank you. And if you're not watching this live but watch it recorded, again, thank you for hanging in for this drivel. Just get out there and just remember, be a good caster. I think that's the thing you can control. Don't get upset if your fish doesn't take a fly because it doesn't take a fly. But get upset if you make a bad cast, because that's entirely up to you. You should get a Rio line. That'll improve it.
Simon, thank you very much for coming, spending some of your time here with us. And
no problem. Thanks,
we'll keep in touch. Yep. Thank you very much. Good night.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.